Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the Perfectly Imperfect Spiritual Podcast. I am Marta, your host, and this is a space where spiritual insight meets real life. We talk about self trust, discernment, and inner coherence without chaos, burnout, or spiritual performance. Today, we are talking about that quiet experience of everything looking fine, but something feeling missing. There is a particular kind of ache that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive as drama. It doesn't always look like sadness. And it can exist right alongside a life that is functioning. You're doing what you said you would do. You're holding things together. You are showing up. You're meeting your responsibilities. And if someone looked at your life from the outside, they might say, you're doing well. And still inside, there can be a low hum, a sense that something isn't landing. You wake up and you can't quite feel the day. You go through the motions and you're fine, but you're not touched. You reach the milestone and it doesn't nourish you in the way you expected. And then you judge yourself for even noticing it because you tell yourself you should be grateful. You tell yourself you're lucky. You tell yourself you're being difficult. But I want to speak to that feeling with respect because sometimes that feeling is not ingratitude. Sometimes it is information. Sometimes I truly believe that it is your deeper self tapping the glass, saying quietly, I am still here. There is a difference between a life that looks fine and a life that feels true. I'll repeat that. There is a difference between a life that looks fine and a life that feels true. And the body always knows the difference, even when the mind is trying to be reasonable. Coherence is not perfection. Coherence is when your inner truth and your outer choices are not at war. It's when you don't have to negotiate yourself all day long. And if you've had to become resilient early, if you've carried a lot, you may not even realize you've been negotiating yourself because you're skilled. You are capable. You're the one who copes. And those identities are not fake. They formed for a reason. Maybe being capable kept you safe. Maybe being the calm one protected you from chaos. Maybe being the one who doesn't need much reduced conflict. So I'm not judging the part of you that adapted. I am naming the part of you that is now outgrowing the adaptation. Because here is what can happen quietly over time. You don't abandon yourself in one big decision. You abandon yourself in small edits. You soften your opinion. You swallow the truth because it will cause friction. You keep things smooth when your body is tightening inside. You keep being the mature one and nothing dramatic happens. But something inside you contracts. And then you start living from that contraction as if it is normal. You call it adulthood. You call it being practical. You call it maturity. But the deeper self, the part of you that knows what's true, doesn't stay quiet forever. Sometimes it simply stops giving you energy for what no longer fits. From a spiritual point of view, that something is missing feeling is often friction between who you have become and how you are still living. And when that friction appears, three movements are usually happening underneath. The first is that your soul is no longer consenting to the identity you are performing. There are identities we build to survive, identities we build to belong, identities we build to be chosen, identities we build to be safe. And those identities can carry you far, but the soul evolves, it refines, it deepens, it matures. And at some point, something in you realizes very quietly, this version of me is too small. And you can still function inside it, but it feels tight, mechanical, like you're living from a script that once protected you, but now, let's be honest, it limits you. The second movement is about energy. Your energy is extended outward more than it is rooted inward. Energy in this moment is attention. It's how much of your life force is spent anticipating, managing, smoothing, holding. Some people are not living their lives because they are busy managing everyone else's. They are scanning moods, carrying other people's comfort, keeping the peace, being the emotional center of gravity for the room. And they do it so automatically, they don't even call it labor. They call it being kind, being mature, being understanding. But when your attention is constantly outside you, you start losing your own signal. You stop hearing your yes. You stop trusting your no. You forget what you want until your body forces you to notice. And the missing feeling appears, not because you're broken, because you are overextended. And the third movement is that you're being pulled forward, but part of you is resisting the elevation. Growth is not always exciting. Sometimes or often, growth feels like grief because it asks you to let go of the familiar. Your deeper self may be ready for a more honest life, deeper truth, deeper integrity, deeper standards, while your human self fears disruption. It fears being misunderstood. It fears disappointing people. It fears not knowing who you will be next. So you delay, you negotiate, you tell yourself stories. I will push through. I will just persevere. I'll just wait until it's calmer. I'll do it later. Or perhaps you are giving your power to the universe and you're going to tell yourself, I trust divine timing, I'll go with the flow. Sometimes patience is wise, but sometimes this is postponement dressed as responsibility. We delay things, but deep down, you often already know. You know what you've been delaying, you know what truth you keep negotiating. And now there's another reason this shows up, and it's a big one: inheritance. Not money, expectation. Many people are not just living their lives, they are unconsciously carrying unfinished lives. A parent's regret, a family's ambition, a cultural script, a silent agreement. Sometimes it's subtle. You're the strong one, you're the responsible one, you're the one who will make us proud. And sometimes it's very direct. And I'll share something personal here because this is not theoretical. I remember very clearly the moment I refused an inherited path. There were family expectations around a business, a storyline about what I was supposed to take on, what I was supposed to continue. And when I said calmly and clearly, no, I am not doing that, I am doing my own thing, it wasn't neutral. People were offended, not because I was cruel, but because my no disrupted a script. And that taught me something important. Sometimes people aren't reacting to you, they are reacting to the loss of certainty. They are reacting to the fact that you are no longer playing the role that made them comfortable. And if you've been the one who keeps the peace, that can feel unbearable at first because you want to explain, you want to soften it, you want them to understand. But the deeper truth is that you cannot live your life to keep everyone unoffended. You cannot belong by self erasing. And sometimes choosing yourself will disappoint people who expected access to your choices. And this isn't selfishness, that's adulthood. And yes, it can be painful, but the pain of disappointing others is often cleaner than the pain of abandoning yourself. Now, you do not need collapse to justify change. You don't need a catastrophe to earn the right to grow. Sometimes the quiet something is missing is enough. Sometimes that is the moment your deeper self is asking for honesty. So, I want to take you into a gentle visualization, not a performance, just a return. So, if it feels safe, close your eyes or soften your gaze and take a breath in and let it go slowly. Let's do it one more time. Take a deep breath in and out. Now, imagine yourself 10 years from now. Two timelines. In the first timeline, you kept living for what was expected. You kept maintaining. You kept postponing the truth you already know. Notice what you sense in your body as you look at that version of you. Not the story, the sensation. Now, let that timeline dissolve and shift to the second timeline. In this one, you chose honesty, not reckless change, honesty. You stopped editing yourself in small moments. You made one clean boundary. You told one truth you'd been postponing. You made one decision that returned you to yourself. And you kept choosing yourself in small, steady steps. Now, notice this version of you. Again, not the story, the sensation. And ask yourself one simple question. If I made one small move towards alignment, what would it be? One move, one conversation, one boundary, one admission, one choice that brings you back to yourself. Trust whatever comes first is the right answer. And before we close, I would like to offer 3 practical ways to return to yourself when your system is overloaded. First, name it precisely. This is overwhelm. This is overextension. This is my system asking for less. Second, orient. Look around and name what is real. Let your eyes land on something steady. Bring yourself back into the room you are in. And third, move. Not exercise, just discharge. Shake out your arms, stretch, walk to another room, let the body complete what it is holding. Small actions, clean actions, they bring you back Now, let's bring this home. If you recognize yourself in this episode, I want you to hear this as a blessing, not a verdict. You're not failing. You may simply be outgrowing a version of your life. And outgrowing is a threshold, and that's exciting. Not because it is dramatic, but because it is honest. Coherence is built deliberately, one clean move at a time. And if you want support to rebuild that coherence and strengthen self trust in a way you can actually live, you will find ways to work with me in the description. Thank you for listening. Take good care, and I will speak to you next time. Bye, everyone.